Welcome back. Today we are going to discuss some more top 10s, most important, or tops of my list when it comes to pantry and food storage. Won't you join me?
Welcome to Modern Homestead Alaska. We are Erin and Jessica Milnes. We are building a modern homestead outside of Wasilla, Alaska, with the help of 3 of our children. Our second son, Caleb, our daughter, Cody Ann, and the youngest of our family, Wyatt, along with our 3 dogs, Tipper and Daisy, and the newest addition, Roberto.
I was just messaging with another YouTuber about how much work these big pantries that we show you on YouTube actually are, and kind of we were talking about a little bit of the behind the scenes, where if you have what we have on a smaller scale, it might not seem so overwhelming. But some of us have pantries that literally are like full-time jobs for us. Now, I do want to discuss a little bit today. What we're going to talk about is the long-term storage. I'm going to share with you the top 10 things I think you should prepare with or start with if you are interested in starting a long-term storage, rotating sort of pantry like what I have behind me here. But I also along the way would like to share with you a couple of downfalls, things that can go wrong, and ways to mitigate them that I have found. And also I'm going to share with you how this specific pantry began for me and why. Let's start with how this began. Well, 2020 hit us the same way that it did you guys. Erin and I were in the middle of, we had sold our home. We were in a rental, and I decided that I wanted to start stocking up some longer term items, and I needed to figure out how to store them properly. Second of all, where to store them. At the time we lived in Arizona, and garages are not good storage in a state that gets that hot. We could hit 120 degrees, and then in your garage, because it was an enclosed box that doesn't get any airflow, it would be even hotter. So the truth of the matter is a storage unit, kind of like the gray ones I have upstairs that my plants are on. I had that to begin with some 5-gallon food grade buckets, and I have learned a ton since I started doing that. I put that in my bedroom. There it was in the master bedroom. I kind of tucked it behind the door where we could see it, but it wasn't seen by everyone that comes in and out of the house. But I at least had begun a long-term pantry. The first thing that I did in that pantry, though, was just put some liners in the bags and then just dump the product in there. I'm going to share with you why that is not a great practice. I need to take you down to this shelf and show you 1 or 2 or 3 of the products that work really well that way, but I need you to understand everything else on my top 10 list doesn't work well this way, and I'm going to show you why. So in here, I have what's called just white sugar. This is what you're going to get at Walmart or any of the other places. It's not an organic sugar, and this is what I had done. So we have this white clear food grade bag, and then in that food grade bag I dumped it. Do you see this sugar I don't use? Stick my little finger in there. It's not quite a block yet, but if I don't get to using this sugar or storing it differently, this sugar will turn into a giant 5-gallon block of sugar. And then what do I do with it then? Things like flour, beans, rice, some of the other things we're going to discuss, they don't store well this way. Although this is all that I knew to do in the beginning, and things like, right here I have some organic cane sugar. I blow through this in my pantry fast enough that I store it this way without any issues. Let me show you why just dumping everything in a bucket is a problem. All right, over here I have another one of what we call our mistake buckets, although I can repair this. And in fact, this bucket is going to be taken upstairs because I've processed so many pinto beans in the last month or so that I'm finally ready to open this bucket and deal with it. Here's the problem with putting everything in one bucket. This one I did use a 5-gallon Mylar bag and seal the Mylar bag. And then this one was done, it says 6 of 2021. So, what's gonna happen is if you were to open a 5-gallon bucket of pinto beans today, how quickly are you going to use them? The second question is if this was an item that I needed to share with someone and I had everything stored this way, I just don't have enough like giveaway containers, you know what I mean? Or then I'm filling Ziploc bags or giving away my good canning jars or those sort of things. I don't store things that way in our house. And so I couldn't, if there was a family in need and I wanted to give them like rice and beans and those sort of things, I'm not going to give them a 5-gallon bucket of anything. And I'm not going to use, in general, a 5-gallon bucket of anything at any given time. So storing it this way, although the buckets are my preferred method of storage, it's how we store them in the bucket that matters. So this giant bucket of pinto beans, now instead of being with a 30-year life, the way that it's stored is a 30-year life, it just isn't manageable and it isn't usable in this form. Therefore, I am now having to do double work in dealing with buckets that I stored this way. Let me show you what's a better idea. Is it a better idea or the best idea? I think small containers are the best way of storing things long-term in sealed packaging. This happens to be Mylar. I have a food sealer that sucks all the air out. It's a chamber vac and it seals Mylar bags. So in these in particular, I don't have to put oxygen absorbers. So I rarely use oxygen absorbers anymore. However, if you do not, nor because we're at the beginning, we're just ground floor in this, right? We're starting at the bottom. You're probably gonna have something like a flat iron or a regular house iron or a way to seal a Mylar bag, but you're going to use an oxygen absorber to do so. And we can talk about that in upcoming videos. But what I think the best way to store your long-term beginning pantry is in workable amounts. How do we decide what a workable amount is? For me personally, my upstairs pantry is full of these 1/2-gallon jars. So what I try to do is store everything in a way that would go into the 1/2-gallon jar. So when I open this, I don't have random bits of beans. I don't have a 5-gallon bucket of beans. I don't have even a cup left over. What I have is an exact amount of beans that will go in, fill that 1/2-gallon jar, it goes on my working pantry shelf, and I'm able to work from there. You might not have an entire pantry of 1/2-gallon jars. So store your beans as well as you might not have a family of 5. You might have a family of 10. You might have a family of 1. Store the beans in a working amount for you. And that can be something so simple as a Ziploc bag that's 1 pound per bag. That might be in the original packaging of beans, because so long as you keep them clean and dry and without infestation, such as like bugs and moths and those sort of things, mice, rats, so on. If you're keeping them in these 5-gallon buckets or in the storage totes or whatever, where they are safe, you can even store beans in the original packaging. In fact, a lot of these beans in my working pantry upstairs right now are in original bags because I just didn't feel like opening all these 1-pound bags, and I'm working through them fast enough that I can go through, I have 2-gallon buckets like this upstairs, that I can work through those without getting into my long-term storage. But today is all about long-term storage. So this is my preferred method of storing things long-term and then putting them in the 5-gallon buckets or storage totes, however you choose. Lesson learned. Recently, I ran out of Mylar bags. I was just needing, because the big 50-pound bag had been open of polenta, and I needed to get it stored up one way or another. And so I went ahead and threw it in these bags that came with my food sealer, and all but this one sealed. So check that out. The polenta is sealed really well in there. There's no oxygen absorber. I'm not worried about the fact that it's in a clear bag because it's going to go into a tote. Everything is going to be fine. I just slowly collect the totes over time. The basement generally is dark where everything is stored, but this one didn't seal. So for some reason it's sealed, and then I come down here and the seal is broken somewhere. So this either has to get resealed, or I need to just take this up, add it to the storage, and start using my way through it. That's up to you how you choose to deal with it. However, I wanted to show you kind of some of the pitfalls and things that you need to be aware of. Is not everything seals. So don't be overly confident when you put it in the packaging and you seal it up and you throw it in the tote. You need to come back and check that 24, 48, 7 days, however long after, and make sure that everything really truly is sealed up well, especially if it is something that has a shorter expiration. Beans and rice, super long expiration, but things like flour don't have a super long expiration. So we want to make sure corn, flour, those sort of things are sealed up and they're not getting any airflow, especially spices, guys. Hear me on that one. So check your bags. I'm just going to redo this because I have polenta upstairs that we're already working through. There you go. Here's some pitfalls in food storage. All right, let's talk about my top list. If I were to start over today, brand new, never had a long-term food storage, what would be the top items that I would put in that food storage? And mostly it's not the things you see behind me here. I have moved my food storage into the point of grinding my own grains and having extensive amounts of wheats and grains and those sort of things. That is not how I would begin my food storage if I had to start all over today. These are not in order of most important, least important. I think all of these things are equally important. So let's just start with what I have down over here. Number one, we're gonna start with salt. I have 50 pounds of sea salt that we've dipped into. I have 50 pounds to replace it because we've started using it. If we get to the point of using this stuff, we're rotating through it, but we have it for the long term, for emergencies, salt is extremely important. Not only does it add flavor, but all of the things that you're hunting, you're fishing, you're preserving needs salt. So make sure that you are getting a salt in your long-term food storage that is quite honestly universal. That's why I just go with this white sea salt from Azure. I have tons of salts in there, some gray salts and some Redmond salts and some pink salt. And You name it, I have some of the weirdest salts you've ever seen. I love to combine those and use them. I have kosher salt and pickling salt and so on. You get the point. That's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about is getting the most basic sea salt that I could use to can, to cook, and to preserve. Also, it's good for cleaning, for wound care. The list is endless of what you can do with a good quality salt. So make sure you bulk up on salt. The next thing I showed you down here is sugar. And I'm gonna go off on my own a little bit on the sugar, because I say for your long-term food storage, bulk up on the sugar that you can afford. I don't personally use that C&H sugar that had originally been bought back in 2020, 2021, right when everything was happening, and I just couldn't get other kinds of sugar. So when I was able to get a 50-pound bag of sugar, I got it regardless. I want you to be kind of budget conscious as you're starting out. If you have infinite funds and you're just beginning and you're like, money is no option, sure, get the best organic sugar that you can. However, for the rest of us, I just started out with a 50-pound bag of either C&H or the Walmart brand white sugar and have it so that I can do tons and tons of baking and meals and so on for my family if things were to go south. The third item I'm gonna recommend is some other form of sweetener. Now this is gonna depend on your family. For me, those of you that have been around here for a long time, you know that I love honey. I don't do agave. If I have any syrups like maple syrups and so on, it's very, very minimal, but honey is major for me. That is used daily in coffee. It is used in cooking. You can even make jams and jellies. It is good for wound care, and the list is endless of what we can do with honey. Not only that, honey never expires. It might crystallize, and you might have to slowly heat it up to get it to a different texture or so on, but the honey itself never goes bad. So honey is my biggest recommendation. If honey is something you cannot have or something you don't like to have in your diet for any reason, choose a different sweetener. Choose the agaves, choose the syrups, choose those sort of things. But don't necessarily, for long-term storage, don't go brown sugar. Brown sugar has a short shelf life because it's going to dry out, it's going to turn to a clump, and you can make your own brown sugar with molasses and sugar. And so I just highly recommend honey as my chosen additional sweetener. The next number 4 item that I stocked up on in the very, very beginning, one of my original buckets was devoted to it, and I get this at Costco, and that is baking soda. Baking soda is not only used for cooking and odors and drying things out. You can clean with this. This can be turned into deodorant and toothpaste, and the uses for baking soda are also endless. So on most of these items here, we needed multiple uses for the items. They needed to be simple, they needed to be basic, and they needed to have super long shelf lives if stored correctly. So baking soda makes my top 10 list. The next item is gonna be some sort of flour or the ability to make flour. Not the ability to make flour with a combination of grains, but flour itself. I have a personal favorite flour from Costco, and I stock up and I bulk on that organic flour. However, in the very, very beginning, when everything went south, we're also going to tell a horror story. I was only able to go to a discount store. It was the only one that had any flour at all. I was trying to make bread and do all of this at home, and I just bought the cheapest white flour that they had. That, my friends, is my horror story, personal experience. I should have popped it in the freezer. I didn't have the ability because I didn't have any deep freezes at the time. And come to find out, not only were they selling expired flour when everything went south, it was infested with weevils. And so they leave the flour and they go to your rice and your sugar and everything. And I lost a ton of food in my pantry by not preparing, by not freezing, and by not buying a good quality flour. So here's my recommendation from my horror story. Get the flour you can afford, get it divided out. I'm gonna suggest in 1 gallon bags, and then pop them in the freezer. If all you can fit is one gallon bag at a time, freeze that 1 gallon bag, put it in your long-term storage, put another 1 gallon bag in your freezer, and rotate out until your storage is full and you have taken the time to kill anything potentially in that flour. So here in Alaska, I'm really good at leaving it outside in the truck for days and days where it is sub-zero negative temperatures. I have plenty of deep freezes. I have a way to freeze my flour. I've had no issues other than that one during 2020. I've not had no issues before and no issues since. But once it happens, it is so horrifically hard to get rid of the problem without just starting from scratch. And no one wants to put all the time and money and effort into doing this and then having to start over from the beginning. Freeze your flour, store it in 1 gallon bags because that's what most people can kind of work through when they pull it out of the long-term storage, is 1 gallon or 10 pounds of flour, whatever works best for you. Freeze it. All right, the next item, number 6 of must-haves if I'm beginning from the beginning a long-term pantry, is beans. Now, do you go to Costco and buy a 50-pound bag of pinto or black beans? Maybe. Do you go to Walmart and buy 50 individual 1-pound bags of beans of all different kinds? Maybe. I don't care how you do the beans, but what I'm gonna recommend is you start out with 50 pounds of beans. And whatever bean it is you start out with, you start introducing it into your family's diet now. Most families, the things I've already listed, you're able to now make pancakes or waffles or any of these bread items or treats or so on that your family is already probably used to. If your family isn't eating beans regularly and you go and bulk up on a bunch of stockpiled beans and something happens, maybe you lose a job or you're forced to eat off of your food storage, or we have a catastrophic, I call it a catastrophic event of 2020 when food was gone. If what you have is beans and that are not part of your family's diet, A, it's gonna upset the stomach and the body is not gonna be happy. Second of all, it destroys the morale. But if beans are something that your family loves and they're already eating them and you're incorporating them in the diet, then it's no big deal when things go south. Your children might not even notice that maybe you are struggling or things have gotten hard and you're introducing or having beans more frequently if they've always had them. So that's my recommendation. Would I do 50 different bags of beans? Maybe. Would I do one kind of bean that my family just loves and this is it, this is the bean, and I'm gonna start out with 50 pounds of pintos? Fine, do it that way. See if I care. It's your house, your pantry. Do what's best for your family, but do start out with 50 pounds of beans. The next item is rice. Rice and beans are so classic and typical. They have really, really long shelf lives. They're really great to start out with, and rice in generally is part of people's diet as it is. If rice is not part of your diet, you might consider something like quinoa or a different grain, but please, please, please get a grain stocked up. Choose the rice. Again, I have lots of variety of rice for lots of different reasons, but let's just start with your family's favorite long-term storage rice. So we're not talking minute rice, we're not talking flavored rice, we're talking plain Jane, long grain white rice, basmati, jasmine, you name it, you choose the rice. I'm again gonna say store it in 1 to 2 pound packages, whatever suits your family, so you can pull that bag of rice out, refill it, and use it in your daily diet. Rice is on my top list. All right, the next thing I'm going to recommend is vinegar. I go back and forth of whether I'm gonna suggest 5 gallons of apple cider vinegar or whether I'm gonna suggest something like a distilled white vinegar. So I'm gonna recommend both. Number one, I want you to have something with the mother in it that's good for gut health, that can be used in lots and lots of ways and can be used to create more vinegar. So I'm gonna suggest whether it is just a bottle, like the 3-pack bottles from Costco of apple cider vinegar, or you get a big 5-gallon bucket of it from Azure like what I got, and I use it for canning and all sorts of stuff. Get yourself a good organic with the mother apple cider vinegar, even if it's a small amount to start out with and large amounts later. And then you've got to get the white vinegar. The reason we have that is it is a cleaner, it is a deodorizer, it can be used in your laundry, it can be used to clean. We have some older dogs, we lost Daisy, but Tipper is an older dog. If she has some accidents, if you have a puppy, just straight white vinegar on a pea mark soaked up will kill the enzymes, it kills the odor, it takes it out of the carpet, whatever. Vinegar is amazing. You can use it as a cleaner to sanitize countertops, wood countertops or cutting boards, those sort of things. Just the uses for vinegar are endless, and it can be ingested, it can be ate, it can be consumed. It's non-poisonous. So on and on and on. Vinegar is so important, especially if you have some livestock. I would do the apple cider vinegar. I give that to the chickens. You've got to have some vinegar. Again, ways to preserve, but multiple uses if that happens. If you just run out of fabric softener, use some vinegar. If you need a floor cleaner, use the vinegar. It's great to have in your stock, even if it's not your preferred method. Having it stored up. We were unable to get white vinegar for a little bit last year up here, and so I've stocked back up on it, but I go back and forth of using it as a cleaner and then not. When it was hard to get, I quit using it as a daily cleaner. Now that it's easy to get again, it's back to being a daily cleaner. So let's move on to the last items. This item is also going to go along with vinegar. It's going to qualify for me in this category of storage, and that is going to be oil. Oil of choice, but oil with a long shelf life. So whether it's olive oil for you or grapeseed or whatever it is that you can afford, get yourself a couple of gallons of oil tucked into your long-term storage, and then rotate through that. That was ice off of the front porch. It scared me. Anyway, so we're gonna rotate through our oil faster than we're gonna rotate through anything else because it does have a shorter shelf life, but it is vitally important for cooking and all of the different things that could happen that you might need. So make sure you have several gallons of oil on hand. If I had to start my pantry over again, I would put coffee and tea. Aaron is such a huge black tea drinker in the summertime. We're talking he could go through a gallon a day. Coffee is a must in our house. That's just us. And then I am a huge hot tea fan. I have tea every single day. So we have lots of variety, but if I had to do it all over again, I would just do black tea because that I can handle it hot. It's not my favorite. And we can have it cold. And then coffee of choice. Those things, we can seal them up, rotate through them, but we have something to drink on if things did go south and you're having to have some stale or maybe the water, it's clean, but it doesn't taste the best. Putting it in some coffee or tea is the way to zhuzh it up, get yourself some caffeine, and feel a little bit normal. So whatever that drink is for you, I recommend if you have someone in your home that is a coffee or tea, or maybe it's a Gatorade or a lemonade or something like that, whatever is really a drink of choice, get some of that stocked up. It really is so good for the morale if things start going south and you need to use it. All right, I think that's 10 items. Here is one more item that I did not put in my original storage, but it soon enough came in, so it's gonna be a bonus item for you. I would do some sort of dried milk. If you have little ones, maybe a stock of formula, dry milk, powdered, whether it's, you know, I have everything now from the whole milks to the skim milks to even right behind you that is going to get put in this storage is some buttermilk powder I got from Azure, so on. That's an honorable mention. I know that they do like dried sour creams and all of these different things now, but get yourself some good milk stored up. I'm not necessarily saying we put it in cereal because my kids would be really disturbed by that. But what I am saying is if I have it for cooking, I have it for meals, and maybe it does get introduced into the diet for some reason, as with cereal. I know as a kid, we had to have that several times. I wasn't a fan, but I at least had cereal for breakfast before I went to school, even if it came from powdered milk. So that would be my honorable mention as far as these products go. I hope that you enjoyed though. Let me know your thoughts on my top list of things to absolutely from scratch begin a long-term pantry with. And then let me know any horror stories or any victories that you have had in your long-term pantry. With that, I'm gonna bid you adieu, but I'm gonna ask you for a favor. If you're new around here, would you hit that subscribe button? If you ring the bell, you'll get notifications and you won't miss anything we're talking about here on the homestead. Thumbs up and comments all help my channel to grow. If this would help someone you know with their very first long-term storage pantry, hit that share button. I would greatly appreciate it. Now, it's time to bid you adieu. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.